We had kind of a proof of concept moment very early on where we had one of the very first Whole Food buyers come discover us, and she literally hugged us and said, "Where have you been?" And awesome. So, Rachel and I looked at each other and we said, this just may work.
Welcome back, everybody. Brubaker, Shanghai-based social entrepreneur, here today with my good friends Jeff and Rachel from Bambu. You can see their products on the back. Just had an amazing conversation about their business, how they got started, where they find passion, how to find focus, and the importance of doing this as a journey. A lot of great lessons at the end about what they would have learned, or what they've done differently. But the reality is, the path is the path, and they've adapted, they've adjusted, they've climbed over, they've gone over it, they've gone to the left. It's been a lot of fun.
Great. Well, Rachel and I started this business called Bambu, B-A-M-B-U, way back in 2003. It's about 17 years ago now. And we started the business with a real clear focus of wanting to turn people on to renewable materials and away from plastic. And we do that with a range of renewable materials, largely focused on bamboo, but also dabbling in other renewables that are found here in China, such as cork, hemp, coconut, some others as well. Yeah.
What got you into, why did you care about plastic? Why did you care about doing a renewable material to begin with as a starting point?
Well, being in Asia, it was quite astounding, or the plastic was more visible than in the West, and we really felt the impact of so much waste and plastic visibly. That was certainly a challenge for us, and if we were going to make more stuff, then we needed to take responsibility for that product and make sure that it was made out of renewable materials. And
at the time, we were discovering and getting exposed to, say, bamboo and others that we were talking about while living in Asia, and seeing this material used in daily use items and throughout a lot of our travels and experiences. And we felt at that time, wow, it'd be great to introduce this material to a Western audience with a certain design aesthetic that we later brought to it.
With that in mind, then, what were maybe the 3 or 4 guiding principles when you founded this? Obviously, materials was important. Are there a couple other things when we build this, we have to do these things right?
We really took into consideration the whole supply chain, whether low impact packaging materials. And then, more importantly, end of life. And so it was really important for us to sort of look at this holistically and make sure that we were taking responsibility for that whole product, including end of life.
And I think we didn't want to just replicate what other people were doing, or simply go, oh, let's make bamboo chopsticks because that's what people in Asia do. We wanted to create products that were actually beautiful and had a sense of the naturalness about them, but were also functional and usable in our own kind of Western ways.
Keep in mind too, this is right after 9/11, and so people were sticking close to home. They weren't traveling so much. They were really focused on the home, renovating their kitchens. The whole notion of an open plan came about. Food Network was exploding. So we thought the best way to sort of introduce a product into the home was in the kitchen.
Through the kitchen. So it was a conscious decision we made, and then developed kind of a line of products and identified the suppliers. And we weren't really sure how we were going to do this, but you go to a trade show and you set yourself up and you show your pieces, and we had kind of a proof of concept moment very early on where we had one of the very first Whole Food buyers come discover us, and she literally hugged us and said, "Where have you been?"
That's
and
awesome.
So Rachel and I looked at each other and we said, this just may work.
Talking about the materials, we've had a lot of discussions about the challenges maybe of working with renewable material? I mean, everyone thinks like, oh, get rid of plastic, move to renewable,
Right.
magic happens, right? Like it's it's as easy as that.
Yeah.
Can you talk, we talk a lot, you guys are farmers, right? Like you start there.
Yes.
Maybe tell the audience a little bit like, what goes into making like this bamboo straw
Right.
or, some of these spoons that we have behind us, like, are you seasonal? Like, is there a rush? Are there things that you ran into? You're like, oh, I didn't think about that. This is just work. But
Early
Yes,
days,
yes.
the seasonality what definitely impacted us, and so you just quickly learn what that seasonality is. And for example, and unfortunately, the seasonality of it all is counterproductive to our selling seasons, and so. When we have a really big, one of our biggest seasons is the spring, but the rainy season doesn't allow for harvesting bamboo in this case, doesn't allow for farmers to be harvesting during that time. So
Doesn't
lots
quite line up
lots
where
of
we
challenges. But over time and working with our producer groups, we've been able to the fall is the best time to stock up on our inventory, and so we do a lot of forecasting to make sure that we can get that done.
We have to pay attention to moisture content, for instance, and we've had to, through trial and error and learning, zero in on exactly where the optimum moisture content is on a bamboo product or the material itself.
Right.
The curing process, what's right, what's not enough. So part farmer we are, indeed.
okay, you have an organic certification in bamboo. This was new. Talk a little about like the process of getting certified. You've also got B Corp,
Right.
and you've done some of this. So, a lot of brands, particularly in the space, sustainable, green, fair, like they're always looking for the logos. What is it about the certifications? How do you look at certifications, and what is what's the process? Is it painful? Is it easy? Like, you're a good guy, so they make it easy for you?
Well, we felt like our USDA organic certification was really important because our product touched food. The challenging aspect of that was it was the only product that wasn't food that we put forth to be certified, and so
Normally it's
right.
tea,
It's food.
particularly
It's
in this
food or
region.
consumables. It's food or consumables, and so for our product, I think it was particularly difficult because the paperwork was engineered
Not made for
around.
us.
It was engineered around consumables, and we weren't a consumable, so we were asking, hey, how do we do this together? So it was a little clunky, but as Jeff mentioned, we were first out to do this, and it was, I'm not sure how impactful it was to our market, to our consumers, but we felt good about it, and I think it's a very rigorous process, and we have to do it annually.
Yeah.
They're very strict. Very, very strict. There's no way, you have to go through the process. And that entails going to Bamboo Mountain and
Tracing the supply right from the origin and all the way through the whole process. And since we started that, other companies or other products are also touting organic bamboo, but they don't carry the same credentials or have gone through that process.
Okay, let's talk about it then. People knock you guys off constantly. And I remember actually there was a video, which I'll put down below, the young guy who does like all the sustainability videos. He's like, don't use these guys, use these guys. And I was like, thank God that's you, right? Like, but I've been to a couple of trade shows with you. I've seen like, how pervasive are the knockoffs right now? You guys were early in. If I go to Wholefoods, if I go to Trader, like, there's so many brands doing this. How do you protect this when we're supposed to be protecting ourselves? Like, we're supposed to be the good people.
Right.
Well, it's a complicated question. Firstly, as Rachel kind of pointed out very early on in kind of creating the idea of our business, we wanted to be a case study for others. So there was an element of kind of transparency that we wanted to put out there, not so that we would get necessarily knocked off, but to show that we could do this others could too. What we did, and as being the first mover, the material bamboo was quite the green darling when we introduced it. And so we had a lot of press and publicity, and business was doing great. And it's only a matter of time in something like that where you've got the followers that come in. So Rachel and I talk a lot about, we don't spend a lot of time looking around and seeing what other people are doing. We really focus on our own product, on our own process.
You can get caught up in that and to no end. And so it just, every now and again you'll see it and you'll just, take a deep breath.
I think we've seen everything by now, so.
No bamboo stock fights.
We have on a rare occasion.
In the treetops of the bamboo, you can see it. Yeah, I think we've been there.
On rare occasion, we have taken legal action, but very, very rare. Yeah. And so you could spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money chasing those folks, and it's just not worth it.
Then how do you protect yourself against those who are just they're inspired by your work.
Right.
I mean, some of them are seeing I can build a better market. Some are thinking I want to do this too, and now it's available on Alibaba.com.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So how do you?
We've got exclusivity agreements with our producer groups, and we fill them. We fill to their capacity, so we don't give them a reason to go around.
And we have those long-standing relationships with the same suppliers now for over a decade. So there is some degree of trust and loyalty and accountability on that respect.
Right.
On the retail side, do you have them come I need you to go down 3 pennies on the straw, otherwise we're going to go to your competitor? Do you have to deal with that, or have you kind of built the same relationships? Or are there certain relationships you see and some that you're just
No, fortunately we don't really get into too much of that. We've spent a lot of time in trying to keep price out of the negotiation, and quality as really the focal point.
Yeah.
And then it's if the quality product reasonably priced, backed with the right kinds of credentials, then we feel there's a market there for it.
Yeah, we have had to play the no card, and for a variety of reasons, whether it was we were getting squeezed by the margin and or price issues, but there are just some companies from a resource standpoint that it's a barrier for us to even engage with them, because they're this big and we're this big, and we don't have the resources to manage that. Yeah.
We can use straws as a perfect example here. We were the first to introduce straws on a commercial basis, 2012 or several years ago, and it was kind of a slow build, and then all of a sudden straws from everywhere are coming into the marketplace. You can find them everywhere. But I think what customers also they need consistency of delivery, consistency of packaging, consistency of product, and we've built that as, I think, as part of our reputation, that we can kind of be trusted that we'll be here tomorrow with the same quality we were yesterday.
Yeah.
So you open up a really interesting kind of tangent then into the consumer side of this. We hear that consumers will pay for sustainability, particularly the millennials. We hear that people won't because it's too expensive. We hear that they'll pay for quality, but then they actually just go for cost convenience. What are you finding, or what have you found over the last 15 years of doing this then? Do people pay more? Is it certain types of people? Are there people who always pay more? Are there people that just pay a little bit more when they have a little bit more? What are the things that you go back and be no, this is true and this is dependent on too many factors?
I think that of late we're enjoying sort of the zero waste movement and this plastic free movement that's bubbled up, and we do tend to be sort of that go-to brand for that. So I'm really finally it's happening.
I think there's a segment of consumers who are being more considered in their purchases, and they're not just buying product A versus product B, but they're looking at the company behind the product. What does the company stand for? Are they philanthropic in how they operate? How do they behave as a citizen of society? And I think that's increasingly more important. Unfortunately, I think our particular customer considers that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plastic is a scourge that's going to kill all of our fish and us through microplastics. We need to replace it tomorrow, and we keep hearing about this messaging over and over.
Right.
You guys deal with this probably more than anyone else at the operational level. How hard is it going to be for us to get off plastics? And are there alternatives that can bamboo, can the cork stuff, can these materials? Is this the answer? Like, how do you see that? Because you're closer to it than anybody else from the operational, you're not even emotional about it. It's like, how does that work?
It's possible. I don't think it's, I don't know, it's it's a good question because it's possible, but I think that in some cases, working with natural materials, it's not the perfect answer, and so maybe it doesn't last as long as your plastic version, or maybe but it's a really decent alternative to that. As humans, we're going to have to do without. We're going to have to sort of dumb down our lifestyle to
simplify.
Yeah.
But consumers don't like to hear that.
Do
So
not, no.
how do you find engaging people on sustainability? Like, is it you're going to have to do without, or here I've got something for you? Like, how do you?
It's we're going to provide as many solutions as possible, but I think just at the end, I think the other thing that's happening is people are downsizing. They're downsizing, they're simplifying, and I really feel strongly about the fact that folks are they're willing to go without, and we're starting to see that trend.
And I'd say, kind of the encouraging part of this is that we are seeing more people taking a voice, taking a stand against either buying that or supporting this, and so that it's actually consumers who are initiating the change and policy change in municipality procedures that are changing, and so there is a movement. It's on the fringe, it's going to move slowly, but I think the whole notion, and perhaps what's most encouraging, is plant-based solutions. There are more out there than we even know right now, and I think as long as that can continue to build that momentum, there's still hope.
How do you tell your story to your consumers, to your ecosystem, I think in ways to inspire them to think a little bit differently about what they're purchasing, but also really kind of educating them on the natural materials themselves?
I think it's important that people do know that we've got, we're conscientious in how we approach this business, and that I think having a foot here and being as involved as we are from the very beginning, from harvest through production to a final product, I think is important. I think that is part of our story, and it's unique to us. We're pretty thankful to the fact that we get to work and live in two different cultures and experience really two different sides of the world that are often very different, but I think more often than not we find the similarities.
And we're sharing sort of daily life imagery with through social media, and social media when we launched the company, it wasn't it's something that it was all very standard, right?
And that's
it was all about the catalog, and so that's really we've been sort of chasing after social media and trying to do a better job there.
But we like the aspect that it kind of puts us in front and closer to consumers and people, and people ask us questions, and we're pretty open.
Doing a catalog versus social media, vastly different mediums to tell your story. How did you make that transition, and what do you like about the social media aspect against, say, the old way of doing things?
Oh, I think we like the fluidity and maybe the visual emphasis of social media and how it's changing, and the narration can even change. All too often we'd work on a catalog, we'd print it, we'd bind it, we'd look at it and go, you know what, we changed that. Oh, well, it's already been printed, so, you know, so
this year will probably be the first year that we are not printing a catalog, and so we're going digital all the way, and
we've always put a premium of, as much as we can, of quality imagery, whether it's just a simple, beautiful product shot or something in our environment that lends, that shares part of the story, and, you know, paying attention to that quality as well.
Yeah. It's something that as Jeff had mentioned before, just that we're very visual in our life and in our business anyway, and so being able to sort of share our experiences visually is something that we really do enjoy. I think there's the attention span, however, is becoming so short that
yours and mine? Or?
No, I would say our consumers, but I think everybody is used to sort of instant stimuli, and I fear we're missing a beat in terms of really like sitting down with a real book or a magazine or a newspaper.
Were those buyers different than those that were on social media? Like, would
Absolutely.
they buy more of? Were they more wholesale? Like, were they different people? Or?
Their buyers have tended to be older, and so one of the reasons that we kept with printing the catalog was because they insisted on it. Our buyers were not
social media users.
Exactly, and so we ended up having to do that. But I think we're at that point where we can kind of cross over and get away with it. I mean, a lot of our buyers are still faxing in orders, so I mean, if that gives you an idea of
I mean, it's interesting because actually, like, the sustainability community is very community-based, right? Like the markets in Portland and LA and New York, like you go to the market, the trade shows, very, like I'm sure you see a lot of people you've known for years, you build that community, you can share a cup of coffee, how's the family, things like that. But social media, that's something that you have to manufacture. Like, you don't know anyone out there. You have to be like, hey, pay attention to me.
Right.
Create your
build community. How is it different when you're not face-to-face, shaking hands, pats on the back kind of build community?
Well, one of the things we've struggled with is like, well, we got enough to do in our day-to-day. We've, among ourselves, have tried to parse out that part of the job. And then we thought, well, maybe we should outsource it to a professional organization to do that for us. But we've struggled with that because they're not really they're telling our story, we're not telling our story, and you lose something in the translation, I think. So we've kind of vacillated back and forth, and you know, and I think there's a lot of things we can be doing better that we don't do. You are talking to people you don't know anymore, but I think
can you get to know them?
Absolutely, and I think we put up and try to open our doors and ask questions and find different ways that people access points that people can know us.
And no matter what we do, one thing that we really insist on or instill in our day-to-day is just being authentic. And I think that in turn resonates, and we end up sort of attracting like-minded folks. So I think I think that being authentic, if you are authentic, then it comes naturally, it comes easily, and earlier you talked about competition or being knocked off. I think one area that's similar is greenwashing, and for us, I think that it ends up being more challenging than being knocked off, because social media, it's so easy to do that, to manufacture that, and people.
You can just take pictures from somebody else if you want, right?
Sure.
And people still inherently believe what they see and read. read, and I'm reading it, it must be true. And so that for us is really frustrating, is the amount of greenwashing that we see out there, worse than getting knocked off, I think.
Okay.
And so I think our narrative has even changed over time. So, for instance, when you talk about material, not all bamboo is the same, for instance.
Right,
There's
right.
qualitative differences. There's the way you can handle it, and those things make a difference. So, and I think, so as people in general build their knowledge of sustainable materials, we'll start to see how people can, make those discriminating choices.
Yeah. I was actually thinking the Jeff and Rachel story, right? Like, this is something that I think we've talked about
Coming
how
to a theater
much
in
you
there,
guys want to tell, how much you don't want, but it's almost like a lot of the stronger brands now, they resonate with like the founding story. To get away from greenwashing, to get away from brand, it's like, these, and that's, in a way, it's like, we know Jeff and Rachel like at trade shows and the markets, and they know you.
Yeah.
So they're more inclined to stay with you. Do you struggle doing that online? Like, are you comfortable with that? Is it something that like you find people come to and then you take them offline and you have more personal conversations? Like, how?
If what we're trying to achieve is truly sustainable, then it cannot solely rely on Jeff and I. And we need to have mechanisms in place that allow for the business to carry on with or without us. And how do you do that? And we don't want it to be necessarily reliant on us, but if we can sort of instill those values and those aesthetics, to other people who can carry it forward, I think that's important, because if not, the company dies with us, and that's a shame, right?
It's not the exit you want.
Right.
So actually, all right, let's talk about an exit really quickly, in the sense of, a lot of the green good brands end up under, in the mothership of a large brand. So Ben & Jerry's, Burt's Bees, like they end up in very large, and not judging where they end up, but like, is that something you look at? If it is, like, what do you, like, how do you see that in terms of like, is it a legacy thing? Like, you want the brand to live on, and then what are the downsides that you think about? Like, oh, if we sell out.
Right.
I think early on I was encouraged to think, in a case of like Ben & Jerry's, that their values and their story and purpose is actually going to be magnified and absorbed into the larger culture. And I think in some instances that is the goal.
Yeah.
But that's very, very difficult. And even merging two cultures that are so diametrically opposed is almost impossible. And we've seen very few examples where that actually works. We never started this business with the exit in mind. So maybe that's a little bit different than most people who start businesses, is they know when they're going to get in, they know when they want to get out, and they know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
We got in because we wanted to do something that mattered to us and felt good, and we didn't mind working hard, and we didn't put an end date to that. And so I'd say we're probably both surprised that 17 or more years later, we're still doing what we're doing. But we've talked about
No choice.
where this company could go and how it would. And I think, particularly being a B Corp certified business, we're going to be pretty adamant about who we end up talking with.
Say like, and I'm just going to go with Rubbermaid, because it's the only one I can even think of that as a brand that I would even recognize in that space. Like, they come to you. What are some of the principles you like, look, if we're going to do this deal, these are the 3 things that we want to make sure stick around?
Well, I'd say, firstly, and I'll say it before Rachel, because she'll say it too, is, we didn't build this business on our own. We've got people. Now, we don't have a large team, but we have a team of people that are equally dedicated and care. So I say that we'd have to understand how that piece works. We've got suppliers too that rely on us and we rely on them. So there is that kind of dynamic we are.
Another one for me is end of life, and making sure that we're not making product that we can't take responsibility about it. And something I've been hearing a lot is, and where I'm seeing a lot of companies, good companies, are doing a lot with recycled plastics, and so I'm conflicted because on one hand it's like, okay, great, I'm glad that recycling is getting into people's heads, but I feel like we're at a point where it's just it's being less bad. It's not enough. It's not good enough.
Less bad progress? Like, could we see an ocean plastic spoon spork set coming up? And is that a total shift away from your value set, or is it naturals?
I think it has to be natural. I really do. I don't think we would gravitate away from that. I don't think we will ever get into recycled plastics. Even in a closed loop scenario, I just don't. We just need to stop making it, or making so much of it.
Materials where it's difficult to separate. And
combining materials, and I'm seeing this in the fashion industry, and they're saying, well, we're being less bad because we're making things out of recycled plastic, and then I think, well, who wants to wear recycled plastic against their skin? Why is that? Yeah, I mean, so and then why are you still pumping out new SKUs and colors and every month? Why? It's just that has to stop, as well as how.
I saw a great video about how there's 52 seasons in a year, and I think it was Trevor Noah when he was like, no, we call those weeks. Those are weeks.
Yeah.
They're talking like how
fast fashion
these groups, they every day they have a new thing coming out in these stores. Every 3 days they get a new shit.
Yeah.
I think that's what Rachel was talking about earlier. We've kind of got to get off that train of new, need it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm encouraged because we
it's
also
an
see
addiction.
natural fibers.
I think we're really talking about an addiction. The buying cycles. It's an addiction. Our products is going to last a really long time, and so maybe somebody starts with a spoon and they come back and get more spoons. But
if you're a consumer, then how would you what would you want consumers to look for when they're buying something? Then, what are some things you wish they'd consider more of?
Quality, probably.
Well, I'd say when we started, I think we had an idea that a green product would be the motivator, the primary motivator of purchase. And I think what we learned is it's really the same for any product, is are you attracted to it? So does it have a visual appeal to you? Is it reasonably priced in your mind? And then thirdly, what else does it bring? And in our case, it has some green credentials. So I think those factors are still the same in anything that we...
How sensitive to price are your consumers?
Price to value is really important, and so we definitely, and one of the reasons that we chose this type of daily use product was specifically so that it would be accessible to everyone, that we weren't pricing ourselves out of a certain consumer, but that it was affordable to everyone. And so affordability, it was really important. Really important.
I would say also, I think maybe no price barrier, but convenience barriers. So as we're all living hurry up, quick lives where there isn't enough time, we're probably seeing fewer people spending the amount of time in the kitchen making that good, nutritious meal or stirring that with our spoons, and that it's much easier to get something delivered or buy it or nuke it and any of that. So I think we appeal to people who see the value in spending time in the kitchen and putting the effort into the food.
There's things you control, things you cannot control. You've got the trade war coming up that you guys are, exposed to. You have whether or not people are stirring their food or nuking their food. You can't control that, right? What are the things, if you look at your business, that you focus on that you can control and you really try and make improvements, adjustments, innovations? Like, what are the things that you look at your business and go like, this is what I should focus on every day?
You try to do that, but the distractions are great as well. And so, you brought up the point of the tariffs, and we've been on pins and needles for I don't know, 8 months to a year, and that's been very distracting. And I think how we ended up sort of attacking that was just do something. Right. Do something as much as you can. You end up learning a lot, and so
and feeling better.
And feeling more confident.
Even though you can't control the outcome, you can at least control your piece in it.
Right, right. So, so there's a lot of noise in our, in our day-to-day that some we have to pay attention to, and we try and do something about it. And then I think the things where we really stay the course are focusing on our team, making sure everybody feels good about being on the team, and product quality.
Product quality. It comes down to quality. Even packaging quality, or even box quality, or even the things that people don't think about or don't see, we do. And a lot of, as Rachel says, is training people to have a sharp eye, to really have in their day the goal of making the best quality spoon, if you will, that we can.
We recently even one of our producer groups that we're working less with now, but still we've been with them for a very long time. We ended up learning from the workers themselves. The factory owner really prefers to do low-level, similar but low-level product, and the workers actually sort of raised their hands and said, we don't like making this. We like making the bamboo product because because and knowing that just the aesthetics of that product appealed to people who don't even necessarily use honey dippers, for example, but that they could appreciate the aesthetic and raise their hands.
Pride in workmanship. Yeah, that's a good. I think one of the challenges we have that we spend a lot of time on is packaging. How do you use as little packaging as you can, but enough to where it satisfies the needs of the consumer, of the retailer, and of ourselves, also a means to protect the product and give the necessary information.
I mean, this isn't a whole lot of packaging here.
No,
and
this is like a third of what you used to have.
Right, this is slimmed and trimmed, and we've removed all forms of plastic, no tape, no staples, and a lot of that takes some thought.
Well, we set out, 2 years ago on a plastic-free initiative just in our own backyard, in our own packaging, but also our inner cartons, our master cartons. We're now not doing the plastic tape, we're doing paper tape. And it's not sexy stuff, but before you switch out your tape, you got to do a lot of testing and make sure that the product is still going to be, arriving in a safe, condition.
I mean, I was actually going to ask a little bit about this, and the fact that, there's a lot of talk about failure these days, right? Like, don't fail fast. Don't be afraid to fail. Like, how do you guys look at failure? You're testing all the time, which means you're failing more than you're succeeding. But what are you trying to learn from the test? How do you compartmentalize a failure? Like, what are the things that you really worry about in terms of
just keep going. We have found, though, our consumers are more forgiving than we are, and so that is really. That
doesn't
helps.
Really give us permission to.
No, not permission, but certainly I personally am a real stickler for just nailing it and getting it right. So something doesn't work out, you just you tweak along the way.
And Rachel's really leads the inspiration, the design, the product, and she's quite unique in the fact that if a product isn't selling or she can let go of it quite easily. It's not a big problem. Or we'll have products that we use and are around that they're not ready for market. and we have to be vigilant in making those decisions rather
Yeah.
than just put
Well, 'cause
something
it's very
out.
easy to go like this.
Oh, it's
And
so much fun. I mean, for me, it's just tinkering, right? I mean, I love making things, but I also know that it's a real pull on a small team to have X amount of products, and when half or more are not selling well, so we started to really downsize our own line about 5 years ago, and we're half the SKU count that we were initially.
Okay.
I mean, early days it was kind of you make something, you throw it out there, and you see what sticks. But after you get to a point where you say, okay, what's selling, and if it's not selling, and we had to say goodbye to some old friends, but.
And our team will get excited. Great! Oh, we're almost out the door with it. We're what? No. We've got quite a bit of testing to do before we can reach that point.
Most people hate to focus. It's fun not to focus. So actually, talk about you went through that process. You downed your SKU half.
Right.
How did you benefit from that as a brand with your consumers internally? Where did you see the benefit?
Sales grew because we were able to focus on the products that sold.
Well,
Like the
let's.
marketing side, the relationship side.
Well, let's just talk about out of stock. So you're making 100 products, and you're trying to make sure that you're in stock on all of those things, and your resources get depleted. Right, and exactly, and you're spending a lot of money on inventory that's going to sit and sit and sit. So, yeah, there was no downside to that at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Rachel said, we had to say goodbye to a few friends. Or
I think the team had a
potential to
harder
come back.
time,
Potential to come back?
but
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
or
we've brought in some products back.
I'll tell folks, hey, it allows us to innovate and bring new products to market.
So what we call the spoonchilla. We'd come out with a collection of 3 half spoons, half spatula. Quite a unique design. No one had ever done it before. It was a slow build in the marketplace. We thought this was quite clever. They're gorgeous. They're almost sculptural. But they weren't really selling to where they needed to be, so we killed them. But then a few years later, we brought them back. We had a few customers ask about it. We've always loved it ourselves. So in that instance, we decided let's bring it back. So
Cool.
There's a few examples there.
If you were to talk to people who are looking to get in the space, young entrepreneurs, go back 17 years to Jeff and Rachel back then, 3 pieces of advice or 3 things you wish that they would know when they're just getting started.
Well, I would say having a really firm grasp on your financials. It's something
Especially early on.
Right, and it wasn't a strength of either of ours, and so over the years we've really come to respect and see the creativity that can emerge out of that category. I just think having tight finances and being aware of your bottom line and all that goes with that, it's really, really important. And we have a great respect now for for all of it. Yeah. So for me, that's it's not sexy.
You're going to put a lot of time into this, so be passionate about what you're doing. It's got to be important because you're going to have to make compromises in it.
Right.
It will help lead you through.
Well, and that old adage where people say, if you could do it again, would you?
Yeah.
And the answer is absolutely not, because once it's a lot of hard work, and so if you knew it was going to be that much work, you wouldn't do it.
And that's kind of the story that we're trying to tell here is this is all fun and it's all green and bamboo, but in reality there's a lot of lessons.
And you'll be faced with so many challenges and barriers, some that you can see coming, some that blindside you. And you need that to weather through some of those.
I think back to Jeff's point, if you've got the passion, if you've got that will to do it, that keeps you going. That's fuel for the hard work, and I can't imagine being dispassionate about what we're
Yes,
doing
right.
and still be able to come to work every day.
Yeah.
One and one.
I think the reality of knowing where your skills and strengths are and knowing where they aren't. And if where they aren't, then you need to supplement. And it's, I think too often people tend to try to do more than they're really
By
capable
supplements, you
of.
mean spend all your time and learn, or
Or
find a-
third-party source, I think, in
Get
most
help.
instances.
Yeah.
Get help, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we also benefited very early on of sharing our idea, even when it was very much in its infancy, and getting inputs and feedback along the
Well,
way.
Early days,
We didn't have
we wore a lot of
crowdfunding.
hats, a lot of different hats, and I think that's really useful to some degree because you really need to understand your business from all aspects. But at the end of that, finding resources that will do some of
Do better
that
than you can.
better than you can, and so I guess being humble, you got to take the ego out of that.
See one more from you. One
Yeah.
more. That's it.
No, I have two.
Oh, okay.
So one is staying nimble, and not
very good.
not doing what you want to do if things have changed.
Yeah.
And so, and realizing, you got to stay nimble and agile around your business. And early days, I think the housewares industry that we found ourselves in, it was so easy. Just everybody was going through the paces, going to the same trade shows, doing the catalog at the same time of the year. We were just mechanized to be doing the same thing, and so we started to ask ourselves, well,
What if we did
what
this?
if we stopped going to trade shows? How about that? So we stopped going to trade shows, and we allocated that money somewhere else. So I think being nimble and allowing for that kind of change in your business is going to benefit you. I guess my number 3 would be you always know you have options. That everything's going to be okay, and maybe in some cases it's not, but you have options. People, if you keep yourself in a box and with boundaries, then that's going to come back. Yeah. So.
And I was going to add that you got to be comfortable working in uncertainty. That's a good example. You just
Yeah.
never know what's around the corner.
Yeah.